Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel Journey with Vijay Kumar Srivastav. Today I am going to present the topic disaster management. Before presentation I would like to introduce myself. I am Vijay Kumar Srivastav. I have completed MSc Agriculture with a specialization in agronomy from G.V. Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar in 1996. So let's proceed to the presentation. Now to study about disaster. Disaster is a sudden, calamitous event bringing great damage, loss, destruction, and devastation to life and property. The damage caused by disaster is immeasurable and varies with the geographical location, climate, and the type of earth surface. This influences the mental, socio-economic, political, and cultural state of the affected area. After disasters, it took a lot of time for reestablishment and development. If we will discuss about effects of disaster, generally disaster has that below mentioned effect in concerned areas. Like first one, it completely disrupts the normal day-to-day life. Second, it negatively influences the emergency systems. And third, normal needs and processes like food, shelter, health, etc. are affected and deteriorate depending on the intensity and severity of disaster. Disaster may be also termed as a serious disruption of the functioning of society, causing widespread human, material, or environmental losses, which exceed the ability of the affected society to cope using its own resources. Here we will study about disaster management. Disaster management can be defined as the organization and management of resources and responsibilities for dealing with all humanitarian aspects of emergencies, in particular mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, in order to lessen the impact of disasters. As the disaster management in India is concerned, the National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA), headed by the Prime Minister of India, is the apex body for disaster management. The setting up of NDMA and the creation of an enabling environment for institutional mechanisms at the state and district level is mandated by the Disaster Management Act 2005. Now to study about evolution of National Disaster Management Authority. The Government of India, in recognition of the importance of disaster management as a national priority, has set up a high-powered committee in August 1999 and also a nation committee after the 2001 Gujarat earthquake for making recommendations of the preparation of disaster management plans and suggestions effective mitigation mechanism. The 10th five-year plan document also had for the first time a detailed chapter on disaster management. Similarly, the 12th Finance Commission of India was also mandated to review the financial arrangement for disaster management. On 23rd December 2005, the Government of India enacted the Disaster Management Act, which envisaged the creation of the National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA), headed by the Prime Minister of India, and State Disaster Management Authorities (SDMA), headed by respective Chief Ministers of States, to spearhead and implement a holistic and integrated approach to disaster management in India. In disaster management, there are four phases like mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. About each phase, we will discuss in broad details. First phase of disaster management is mitigation. This phase includes actions taken to prevent or reduce the cause, impact, and consequences of disasters. Examples of hazard mitigation includes tying down homes or barns with ground anchors to withstand wind damage, digging water channels to redirect water and planting vegetation to absorb water, constructing levees or permanent barriers to control flooding, reinforcing fencing to prevent animal escapes, and buying insurance policies. The second phase of disaster management cycle is preparedness. This phase includes planning, training, and educational activities for events that cannot be mitigated. Like examples, developing disaster preparedness plans for what to do, where to go, or who to call for help in disaster, and exercising plans through drills, tabletop exercises, and full scale exercises, creating a supply list of items that are useful in a disaster, and walking around a farm and identifying possible vulnerabilities to high winds. Third phase of disaster management cycle is response. The response phase occurs in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. During the response phase, business and other operations do not function normally. Personal safety and well-being in an emergency and the duration of the response phase depend on the level of preparedness. The examples of response activities include implementing disaster response plans, conducting search and rescue missions, taking actions to protect yourself, your family, your animals, and others, and addressing public perceptions about food safety. Fourth phase of disaster management cycle is recovery. During the recovery period, restoration efforts occur concurrently with regular operations and activities. The recovery period from a disaster can be prolonged. Like examples of recovery activities includes preventing or reducing a stress-related illness and excessive financial burdens, then rebuilding damaged structure based on advanced knowledge obtained from the preceding disaster, and reducing vulnerability of future disasters. So these are the four phases for the disaster management. As disaster is causing the lot of impact to the social and economic, so it takes lot of time for recovery. Now disaster warning. This is one of the process for giving the awareness and warning to the society regarding the disaster forecasting. Disaster reduction identifies several key parties that play major roles in the disaster management process, especially in disaster warning. It includes communities, local governments, national governments, regional institutions and organizations, international bodies, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, the private sector, the media, the scientific community. Through disaster warning, the message is communicated to public to get prepared and make the protection measures to the disaster. Here to study about channels which are used for disaster warning. First one is radio and television. This is one of the effective measures by which the message is communicated to the public. Second is telephone, which is by fixed or mobiles. Then SMS service, short message service. Then satellite radio through internet and emails, and global information system and remote sensing in disaster management. So these are the channels which are playing important role regarding providing the awareness and warning about disaster. Here to study about different types of disaster. Disaster is categorized in three types. First one is natural disaster, second is technological disasters, and third man-made disasters. First we will study about natural disasters. This is again divided in different types. Like first one is geophysical disasters, which includes earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis and volcanic activities. Second is hydrological disasters, which includes avalanches and floods. Third is climatological disasters like extreme temperatures, drought and wildfires. Fourth is meteorological disasters like cyclones and storms and wave surges. And fifth is biological disasters like disease epidemics and insect or animal plagues. Second disaster is technological disasters, which includes chemical releases, power outages, natural gas explosions, etc. Then third is man-made disasters, which include terror attacks, race riots, and mass shootings, etc. In general, disasters are categorized in two types. First one is natural disasters and second is man-made disasters. Based on the devastations, these are further classified into major and minor natural disasters and major and minor man-made disasters. If we discuss about major natural disasters, it includes floods, cyclone, drought and earthquake. And minor natural disasters which includes cold waves, thunderstorms, heat waves, mudslides and storms. Again, in other side of man-made disasters, major man-made disasters are setting of fires, epidemics, deforestation, pollution due to prawn cultivation, chemical pollution and wars. Other side, in case of minor man-made disasters, road and train accidents, riots, food poisoning, industrial disasters or crises, and environmental pollutions. So these are different types of disasters. Now we'll study about flood disaster. A flood is an expanse of water submerging land. A flood is caused by excess water in a location, usually due to rain from a storm or thunderstorm or the rapid melting of snow. A flood happens when an area of land, usually low-lying area, is covered with water. The worst flood usually occurs when a river overflows its banks. The flood is constituted not only of the overflowing water but also of all other waters that are unable to drain off into water channels. Now we'll study about different causes of floods. When snow on a mountain melts or when a river or a lake of some sort overflows, it causes flood. Flooding from water displacement, such as in a landslide, also causes floods. And the failure of a dam, when there is leakage or overflow from dam, it will cause flood. An earthquake-induced tsunami, a hurricane storm surge or meltwater from volcanic activity, flooding of coastal areas by high tides or by tsunami waves caused by undersea earthquakes. And after that, a flood that rises and falls rapidly with little or no advance warning is called a flash flood. Flash flood usually result from intense rainfall over a relatively small area. So these are the different factors which are causing floods. What are the elements which are at risk during flood? First one is buildings built on earth which are made of mud or having weak foundation and water soluble material, and the basement of building. These are the elements which are mainly on risk as the structures are concerned. Then utilities such as sewerage and water supply. And third, agricultural equipment and crops, vehicles, fishing boats, etc. And what are the effect of flood? Effect of floods are divided in four type of damage. Like first one is physical damage, where the structures such as buildings get damaged due to flood water. Landslides can also take place and topsoils gets washed away. Second is casualties. People and livestock die due to drowning. It can also lead to epidemics and diseases. After that, water supply is getting affected. Contaminations of water, clean drinking water becomes scarce, and then crops and food supplies impacted. There will be shortage of food crops can be caused due to loss of entire harvest. Here to study about flood management. Flood management involves different activities. Like first one is mapping of flood prone area, land use control. No major development should be permitted in the areas subjected to flooding or which are coming in catchment areas. Then construction of engineered structures. Strong structures to withstand flood forces. Moreover, the building should be constructed on an elevated area, and if necessary, it should be built on streets. Then flood control should be aims to reduce flood damage, which includes flood reduction, flood diversion and flood proofing. Now we'll study about second type of disaster, cyclone. The name cyclone was first coined by Captain Henry Paddington, who was chairman of Marine Court, Calcutta in 1848. It is derived from Greek word which means coil of a snake. Cyclone is an meteorological phenomena in which an area of low pressure characterized by inward spiraling winds that rotate counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere of the earth. Near the places of their origin, they are only 80 kilometers in diameter, but well developed cyclones have their diameter ranging from 300 to 1500 kilometers. They move at faster rate over the oceans than over the land because the irregularities of the land surface retard their speed. The six main types of cyclone are polar cyclone, polar low cyclones, extratropical cyclones, subtropical cyclones, tropical cyclones and mesoscales, about which we will study here. First type of cyclone is polar cyclone. Polar or Arctic cyclones are vast areas of low pressure. A polar cyclone is a low pressure weather system, usually spanning 1000 to 2000 kilometers speed per hour, in which the air circulates in a counterclockwise fashion in the northern hemisphere. Second type of cyclone is polar low cyclone. A polar low is a small scale, short-lived atmospheric system which is depression that is found over the ocean areas in both the northern and southern hemisphere. They are part of the larger classes of mesoscale weather systems. Polar lows can be difficult to detect using conventional weather reports and are a hazard to high latitude operations such as shipping and gas and oil platforms. Polar lows have been referred to by many other terms such as coma cloud, mesocyclone, polar mesoscale vortex, Arctic hurricane, Arctic low and depression. Third type of cyclone is extratropical cyclone. An extratropical cyclone, sometimes inaccurately called a cyclone, is a synoptic scale low pressure weather system that has neither tropical nor polar characteristics. The extratropical refers to the fact that this type of cyclone generally occurs outside of the tropics in the middle latitudes of the planet. These systems may also be described as mid-latitude cyclones or post-tropical cyclones. Fourth type of cyclone is subtropical cyclone. A subtropical cyclone is a weather system that has some characteristics of an extratropical cyclone. It can in a wide band of latitude from the equator to 50-degree curve. Then fifth type of cyclone is tropical cyclone. A tropical cyclone is a low pressure cyclonic storm system. It is caused by a evaporated water which comes off the ocean and become a storm. Typical cyclones are the worst natural hazards in the tropics. Strong winds spiraling anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere blow around the cyclone center at the low level. At the higher levels, the sense of rotation is just opposite to that at the lower level. They generally move 300 to 5000 kilometers per day over the ocean. While moving over the ocean, they pick up energy from the warm water of the ocean, and some of them grow into devastating intensity. On an average, about 5 to 6 tropical cyclones form in the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea every year, out of which 2 to 3 may be severe. Here to study about mitigation policies and strategies. First one is installation of earth warning systems. Such systems fitted along the coastal lines can greatly assist forecasting techniques, thus helping in early evacuation of people in the storm surge areas. Second is developing communication infrastructure amateur. Radio has totally emerged as second line unconventional communication systems and is an important tool for disaster mitigation. Third is developing shelter belts. Shelter belts with plantations of trees can act as effective wind and tide breakers. Apart from acting as effective wind breakers and protecting soil crops from being damaged, they also prevent soil erosion. Fourth mitigation measure is developing community cyclone shelters. Cyclone shelters at strategic locations can help in minimizing the loss of human life. In the normal course of life, these shelters can be used as public utility buildings. Then fifth mitigation measure is construction of permanent houses. There is a need to build appropriately designed concrete houses that can withstand high winds and tidal waves. And sixth mitigation measure is training and education. Public awareness program that inform the population about their response to cyclone warnings and preparedness can go a long way in reducing casualties. Then seventh mitigation measure is land use control and settlement planning. Ideally, no residential and industrial units should be permitted in the coastal belts of 5 km from the sea, as it is the most vulnerable belt. No further growth of settlements in this region should be permitted. Major settlements and other important establishments should be located beyond 10 km from the sea. So these were the mitigation measures of cyclone. Now next disaster is earthquakes. What is earthquake? Earthquake is those movement of the earth crust which makes the ground vibrate and shake backward and forward. The shaking of earth crust proceeds in the form of waves from the center of disturbance. Longitudinal waves, transverse waves, and surface waves are the three types of waves which are includes in earthquakes. Earthquakes may be caused by two types of forces. First one is tectonic occurrence. Tectonic occurrence like faulting, breaking of rocks, raising or sinking of layers of the earth, folding of the strata or vapor seeking to escape from the earth is causing tectonic occurrence. Second is volcanic activity. Violent eruptions and intrusions of igneous magma from below the earth is causing volcanic activity. Now the types of earthquakes. These are of three types. First one is volcanic earthquake, which are associated with the flow of hot magma interrupting volcanoes. This happens to be localized and seldom cause any extensive damage. Second type of earthquake is tectonic earthquake. These are those earthquakes which result from a structural and adjustments inside the earth. Then third type of earthquake is plutonic earthquake. These are the earthquakes which have their origin at greater depth. They may also be generated in the same manner as the tectonic earthquakes far below the surface of the earth. What are the effects of earthquake? There will be collapse of man-made structures like building, bridges and towers, etc. Roads get affected due to subsidence of the ground and enormous fissures appear on land. Then extensive landslides in hilly regions and rocky debris come down to block the path of streams. Then when earthquakes are accompanied by volcanic activity, the destruction is very enormous. Now the mitigation measures for earthquakes. The damage to structures can be avoided by prohibiting restrictions on such earthquake prone zones, and power lines and pipelines can be built with extra slack where they cross such earthquake prone zones. New buildings should be constructed with proper earthquake resistance measures. They require secure anchoring and tight bonding of foundations, frame, outer and inner walls, floor and roofs. And vulnerable older building located in high risk areas might be rebuilt to withstand anticipated earthquakes. Next disaster is wildfire. A wildfire is simply an uncontrolled fire that is wiping out large fields and areas of land. It is typically fire that started out of a lightning strike, or people carelessly starting it, or accidentally, or even arson that went unnoticed and go out of hand. These fires sometimes burn for days and weeks. 90% of all wildfires are caused by humans. Human acts of carelessness, such as leaving campfires unattended and negligent discarding of cigarette butts, result in wildfire disasters every year. Accident, deliberate acts of arson, burning of debris, and fireworks are as well as other substantial cause of wildfires. The effects of wildfire. The less obvious but equally devastating effect of wildfires occurs after the fire is extinguished. These after effects include erosion, landslides, debris flows, and altered water quality. The risk of floods and debris flow increases due to the exposure of bare grounds and loss of vegetation. Fire can be deadly, destroying homes, wildlife habitats, and timber, and polluting the air with emissions harmful to human health. Fire also releases carbon dioxide, a key greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. Wildfires can have immediate and long term effects on the quality of rivers, lakes, and streams. The most noticeable impact of wildfires is a storm water runoff. After the loss of vegetation, the ground's soil becomes hydrophobic and prevents the absorption of water. What are the mitigation measures for wildfire management? There should be thinning of trees, vegetation and brush, and removal of highly flammable vegetation. Disposal of debris such as pine needles, leaves, and dead limbs are required. There should be maintenance of firewood and compost piles at least 30 feet from structures. Elimination of fuel ladders including shrubs near tree branches. Design of defensible spaces with fire breaks such as driveways, walkways, patios, and fences, and integration of natural barriers such as rock outcroppings, wetlands, streams, ponds, and deciduous trees will be helpful. Landscape plants that prioritize plants with high moisture content. Avoidance of barks and wood mulches. Firefighting reservoirs should be planned. Infrastructure should be developed to control the fire. Machinery and equipments should be supplied. Forecast fire monitoring. There should be aerial surveillance. Then mapping should be there, and emergency and deployment plans and control of operations should be on place. Next disaster is landslides. In the recent years, intensive construction activities and the destabilizing forces of nature have aggravated the landslide problems. Landslides refer to the downward sliding of huge quantities of land masses. Sliding occurs along steep slopes of hill mountains. The rate of movement of such a mass is never constant. Landslides occur as a result of changes on a slope, sudden or gradual, either in its composition, structures, hydrology, or vegetation. The changes can be due to geology, climate, weathering, changing land use, and earthquakes. There are different causes of landslides which can be grouped in two types. First one is inherent or internal causes and second is immediate causes. Now to study the mitigation measures of landslides. A significant reduction in hazards caused by landslides can be achieved by prevention of the exposure of population and facilities by physically controlling the landslides. Development programs that involves modification of the topography, exploitation of natural resources, and change in the balance load on the ground should not be permitted. Some critical measures that could be undertaken to prevent further landslides are drainage measures, erosion control measures such as bamboo check dams, terracings, jute and coir netting, and rock control measures such as grass plantation, vegetated dry masonry walls, retaining walls, and most importantly, preventing deforestation and improving afforestation. Disasters cannot be totally prevented. However, early warning systems, careful planning, and preparedness on part of the vulnerable community would help in minimizing the loss of life and property due to these disasters. So this presentation was all about disaster management. Now my presentation ends here. Thank you very much. I have given here my YouTube channel details, Journey with Vijay Kumar Srivastav. Having request, please visit the channel, subscribe it, and provide your kind and valuable feedback for further improvements. Thank you.